In the fertile Jordan River plain, a city once flourished in green splendor. It was known as Sodom, a place of immense wealth and strategic power. The land was well watered, like the very garden of the Lord. Merchants traveled from afar to trade within its towering gates. But beneath the surface of prosperity, a darkness began to take root. The cry against the city grew loud in the heavens above, for the people had turned away from the laws of kindness and peace. Their hearts became hardened by their own abundance and pride. This is the chronicle of a city that chose shadows over light. A journey through the history of the most infamous city in the Bible, Sodom was a hub of excess where enough was never recognized. The citizens lived in luxury, while the poor were often ignored. Pride was the foundation upon which their high walls were built. They possessed fullness of bread, but an emptiness of spirit. Greed drove the economy, leaving the vulnerable with nothing. Hospitality, the sacred law of the desert, was forgotten here. Strangers were not welcomed with water, but with cold suspicion. The streets echoed with the laughter of those who felt untouchable. Every desire was pursued without regard for moral boundaries. Corruption seeped into the leadership and the common folk alike. They were arrogant and did detestable things before the Creator. The ethical fabric of the community had completely unraveled. Injustice was not the exception. It became the daily rule. They neglected the needy despite their overflowing granaries. Virtue was mocked as weakness in the markets of Sodom. The city's reputation for wickedness spread across the lands. There was no fear of divine reckoning in their hedonistic pursuits. Self-indulgence was the primary religion of the masses. The collective conscience of the people had been seared shut. They walked in a path that led further away from righteousness. Two celestial messengers arrived at the city gates at sunset. Lot, the nephew of Abraham, sat by the entrance of the city. He recognized something different about these weary travelers. Lot rose to meet them and bowed low to the dusty ground. He insisted they find refuge in his home for the night. "Do not stay in the open square," he pleaded with urgency. For Lot knew the dangers that lurked in the city's shadows. The messengers initially declined, testing the man's resolve. But Lot pressed them strongly until they entered his house. He prepared a feast and baked unleavened bread for them. Outside, the atmosphere of the city grew tense and heavy. Before they could lie down, a mob gathered at the door. Men from every quarter of the city, young and old, surrounded them. They demanded that Lot bring his guests out to be harmed. Their intent was to violate the sacred rights of the visitors. Lot went out to reason with the angry, surging crowd. He begged them not to act so wickedly toward his guests. But the mob shouted, "This fellow came to sojourn, and he plays judge." They threatened to treat Lot worse than the two strangers. The crowd pressed hard against Lot to break down the door. The messengers reached out and pulled Lot back inside. They struck the men at the door with a blinding light. The mob groped in the darkness, unable to find the entrance. The messengers then revealed their true purpose to Lot. "The Lord has sent us to destroy this place," they declared. The outcry against Sodom had reached its breaking point. Lot was told to gather his family and flee immediately. He went to his sons-in-law, warning them of the coming fire. To them, Lot seemed like he was merely joking or dreaming. They refused to leave the comforts of their doomed lives. As morning dawned, the angels urged Lot to hurry his pace. "Flee for your life, do not look back," they commanded. Lot lingered, his heart heavy with the weight of the city. The angels took him by the hand, along with his wife and daughters. By the mercy of the Lord, they were led safely outside. They were told to escape to the mountains to avoid the destruction. Lot asked to flee to the small city of Zoar instead. The sun had risen over the land when Lot reached safety. Then, the windows of heaven opened with a terrifying force. Burning sulfur rained down from the sky upon the plain. The Lord overthrew Sodom and the entire surrounding valley. Every inhabitant, every plant, and every stone was consumed. The pride of the city vanished in a whirlwind of fire. Smoke rose from the earth like the smoke of a giant furnace. Lot's wife, trailing behind, disobeyed the final command. She turned her gaze back toward the home she loved. In that moment of longing, she became a pillar of salt. Abraham looked out from the heights toward the valley. He saw only a thick haze where cities once stood tall. The judgment was complete, leaving the land desolate. Nothing remained of the wealth or the power of Sodom. The site became a symbol of the consequences of sin. The once fertile plain was turned into a barren wasteland. History would forever remember the name as a warning. It serves as a reminder that justice eventually finds its mark. The silence that followed the fire was absolute and profound. Nature reclaimed the space where corruption once thrived. Future generations would speak of the reign of fire and brimstone. The story of Sodom remains etched in the memory of humanity, a testament to the end of a city that lost its soul